Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name is Jim. You can find us and watch this live stream on our Baby Boomer Tales Facebook page or our Baby Boomer Tales YouTube channel. I'm with Gary Childress today, and how are you doing, Gary?
Doing great, Jim. Thanks.
Gary and I grew up in the same little hometown up in north central Colorado mountains, Granby, Colorado. And you have some good memories about that?
So many, Jim, so many. I mean, it was just a great place to grow up, a great place to ride your bike all around town, great place to go to the park and hang out with your friends, play football at the park. I great memories of working in my dad's store. I think you probably talked about that as well with your dad's store. Yeah, just idyllic childhood, really.
Yeah, was a good place to grow up, wasn't it? 500 people.
Yeah.
You played a lot of sports. I know I played a lot of football in the park when I was a kid, all the time. Dave Boys, John Boys, Pat Taylor. Some of us guys just played all the time.
And there was a hierarchy there, Jim. I don't know, I'm sure you remember, but we would always want to play with the older guys. I think you were done maybe by the time I started showing up at the park, but Pat and Dave and those guys were still around. And so, we'd want to play. Well, we had to be the lineman. We'd never get to be the quarterback or receiver or anything like that until we got a little bit older. Then, as you move through and those guys moved on, then now we got to be the big kids and play the quarterback or the receiver or whatever. But there was a real hierarchy to that experience of playing football in the park. But yeah, we did that for hours at a time. I remember doing that more than just about any other. I remember playing Little League baseball very well. Billy Bernhardt was my coach, a kind of a legend at Middle Park High School from back in the mid '60s, Bill Bernhardt. But then, of course, we played basketball too, but we didn't play as much basketball, I don't think, as we did football.
Football down there in Paul Hamas Park was great experience, wasn't it? Just the field was like 100 yards long. The park was, and 50 yards wide or something.
Yeah,
it was a natural football field.
Yeah, except for the trees. Fortunately, they were all on the side though, so you didn't have to worry about them too much. But yeah, we spent hours, and I'm sure that contributed to some kids being pretty good high school football players too, having put in all that time in the park.
Yeah, and did you play Little League baseball there?
Played Little League baseball. My first memories of Little League. At the time I started playing, we lived in the town, right in the town of Granby. When I was in fourth grade, we moved up on the mesa, the hill up above. But at that time, we lived right by the post office, and I could just walk down the alley to the baseball field. It was really close there, by just got a catty corner from the dairy. And so, yeah, those were my first memories of playing. And once again, those older kids I remember were always down there, and that was when I first started playing. Was the guys we mentioned earlier, Dave Boys and Pat Taylor, and those guys were the seasoned veterans, and so they kind of taught us the game. But they also made you feel like you better step up and pull your weight too. And then of course, as we got older, then we again were the big kids, and it was pretty unorganized, as I remember. But I do remember Bill Bernhardt being my coach when I was in, I don't know, fourth, fifth grade, something like that. And then, ironically, Jim, that was my first coaching job. Was when I was a sophomore, the summer between my sophomore and junior year in high school. I was the Little League coach, so that's where my coaching roots began. And coaching kids who are probably well into their 60s now, or early 60s anyway. But that was fun, and that I definitely wanted to something that I knew that kind of lit the fire in coaching in me. for sure. And you know what? Another thing I was going to tell you is those early years of just being so crazy about sports, which I was, and yeah, you were a real inspiration for all of those things. I remember how crazy about sports you were, and I remember your baseball card collection, and going to watch you play football and things like that. So, while I had such a huge passion for sports, you were a big part of me seeing that in an older kid too. So, thanks for that.
My dad couldn't relate with me. He thought I ought to like horses and working, and neither one of them was very interesting
Right.
to me. So I did like playing baseball and football though a lot.
Right. Right.
There's a
I remember.
story. Before I get to that story, I'd like for you to tell. This transferred your baseball, basketball, football playing like unorganized transferred to organized sports in high school?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just watching. Well, I think really the first, you were. I think we figured you were a senior when I was a sixth grader, and I think that was when I first started watching football. I probably watched it some before that, Middle Park High School, but I can remember your mom taking us to games when we were, when I was a young kid, taking you to your games and really, idolizing you guys and getting to watch that. And then I can remember my dad taking me. This is one of my oldest, longest to go memories. One of those that you don't remember much else about this time, but I can remember going down to watch a basketball game. And this would have been even before you were playing. Probably maybe that 1960. But I don't know if it would have been the 63 team, but it was probably like around 63 was state champions. I think this might have been around 64, 65, going down to Kremlin and watching. And it was so packed that we had to stand on the stage, and they had put just some boards across 2x4s up on the stage, so you could, so you were elevated a little bit so you could see over other people's heads. And I was just mesmerized by that basketball game. I remember the game was over, and I'm just still staring out at the court, all those guys playing, and everybody else got off that board on that cinder block, and it flipped up. I about took a spill, but I was just so enthralled by watching those high school guys play basketball. So yeah, so all of that. My dad taking me down to watch wrestling matches. Paul Stewart, I can remember very well Paul Stewart wrestling, and of course Ernie Zillian, the legendary coach at Middle Park, and going down and watching those. So all of that just led to just burning desire to be part of Middle Park Panther athletics. I mean, that's how it should be, and that's how it is in small towns. Kids just grow up wanting to be a part of that high school sports team, and it's something we kind of miss. I've been at big schools a lot in the Denver area when I've coached, and you kind of miss that where kids just grow from the time they're little and grow up to want to be a part of Middle Park athletics. And I think football had a really special meaning playing football for Middle Park, and I'm not sure. I mean, I love basketball. It's been my career. It's giving me my livelihood for my whole life, but and I love playing basketball for Middle Park, and football was there's just something really special about that, and I think it came from just watching games as I was growing up.
Well, Coach DeBay, you probably have some Coach DeBay stories, but before you say anything about it, we had a podcast March 10th, 2021. It's episode 111 called Coach, and it's about Coach DeBay. And that guy, when you speak about legendary coaches, and for whoever doesn't know, Gary Childress is a very, very accomplished high school basketball coach. We didn't just pull him, off the street, said, "Hey, you want to visit on the internet today." Gary's very accomplished basketball coach in the high school, Colorado high school. Plus, you coached in the state of Washington for a while, didn't you?
2 years. Yeah, 2 years. I went up there. Shout out to my sister, Marcia. She has lived up there all her life, although she has a vacation home in Palm Springs too. But she had been after me to come up there and coach. And so I started at Lyman. I was there for 2 years. And then went to Yuma, which at the time was moving up to a bigger school. That was started Lyman in '79, and then moving up to Yuma for the '81-'82 season, and was there 9 years, and just was kind of interested in getting to a bigger school. And it seems like I kind of was hitting some dead ends here in Colorado at that time, as far as moving to a bigger school. So we'd had a chance to go up to Washington. Actually, 3 years in a row, I interviewed for jobs up there. The first year I didn't get it. The second year they offered it, but I knew I had a really good team coming back. My last year at Yuma, and that team went 23-1. Our only loss was in the Final Four. And then the next year I interviewed and got the job at Ferndale High School, which was real close to where Marcia lived. We only stayed a year. Patty, my wife, who's a volleyball coach and a teacher, wasn't working that year. And we got an offer to come back to Palisade High School in Grand Junction, which we did. We came back and stayed there for 5 years. But then the same high school in Washington, Ferndale, called and said they have basketball, head volleyball, and teaching positions for both of us. So we kicked it around. One of those deals where you kick it around all summer, can't really make a decision, finally decided, let's go. So we went back up, and then halfway through that year, Patty got an offer to come back and coach at Mesa College as an assistant. And so she had made moves, more careers on my behalf. And so, I knew it was time to do that one on her behalf. So then a year later, we got, what was really the jobs that were very special to us. And that was the chance to coach at Grandview High School and open up Grandview. This was 1998, open up Grandview, which was a new high school opening in the Cherry Creek district. And it was just a great move for both of us. She had state championships there. We didn't have state championships. We went to 3 Final Fours. And so that's where we were. I was there for 16 years. She stayed for 18.
She's had a stellar career there, hasn't she?
Yeah, she retired in 2018. I left there in 2014 and actually went out and coached. I thought I was ready to be done, wasn't. So then I took a job that opened up in September that year at Vista Peak High School in Aurora Public Schools. I coached there for 3 years, and we had good success there. Then I was sure I was ready to be done, retired, took a year off, spent that year going around watching college basketball games, college basketball practices, and said, man, I'm really missing it. So I got back in. I just finished my 4th year at Cherokee Trail High School, which is just east of Grandview, and actually the exact same floor plan, Grandview and everything. It's in the Cherry Creek district as well. So just finished my 4th year there. And I'm not sure how much longer I'm going, Jim. about ready to be done, I think.
That's like a suburb of Denver, right?
It's in, yeah, they're Grandview and Cherokee Trail are both Aurora. Address wise, they're in unincorporated, as is our home, unincorporated Arapahoe County. So we're extreme southeast part of the metro area. So
okay,
yeah.
I'd like for you, if you don't mind, to explain about your number 5 high school football jersey, if you would.
About what, Jim?
Your high school football jersey, number 5.
Oh, number 5. Yeah, great
Number
story.
5.
Great story. So Dave Boyes, who was a senior when I was a freshman, Dave Boyes, you've referred to Dave many times on your podcast. Was a senior when I was a freshman, so I didn't get a whole lot of conversation out of Dave, and I didn't try to get a whole lot of conversation out of him. He was, he was He was the senior stud, and I knew that. And so, but real something that really meant a lot to me was then after the season, he gave me his jersey, number 5, and gave me his stirrups that you pull up, over your calves, which, to a high school freshman meant a great deal. I mean, a great deal. So 5 has always been my favorite number ever since. I tried to convince my son to wear it for his high school basketball number, but he was a John Stockton fan and wore 12. But then when he went to college, they assigned him number 5. So I told him,
"Oh, really?
That's karma."
Just out of the blue, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, they said you're not. They were
all my memories of Middle Park High School football. The best 2 players I remember are Dave Boyes and Larry Fisher. So, whatever. I don't really remember you playing high school football.
You remember Larry?
I was off hitchhiking somewhere.
Yeah. Do you remember Larry? Because I knew he was a legend, but I never watched him play. That I remember.
Yes,
you did.
Yes,
huh?
I remember Larry Fisher.
Yeah.
In fact, I think it was his senior year. I believe it was his senior year. It may have been the year after he graduated, but West Grand had come over for a day game on a Friday, which was, we always played day games on Saturday, no lights or anything.
Yeah.
And I was outside after lunch, and there was a bunch of people like Doc Sirianni and a bunch of ranchers and stuff out there talking. I heard several of these guys saying, well, after we win this game, which goalposts are we going to tear down? So I went and got my old buddy Wayne and told him. And so we went and told somebody, and they said, oh, they're not going to tear it down. West Grand beat us that day. And we were the perennial powerhouse, but they tore down the southern goalpost. I still remember that. And so I think I was 7th grade, which would have been Fisher's senior year.
Uh-huh. They got her down though, huh?
They did. They broke it all down. It was very, very big brouhaha, to say the least, between East Grand, West Grand.
They're lucky they didn't tumble down a hill there. There's a good sized hill right there.
I know, yeah. The hill's right at the end of the end zone. Yeah. But that was the days there was wooden goalposts, with 2
right.
With 2 stands holding it up instead of the 1, and so I've only seen that happen twice. Once at KU, we beat Colorado at a home game, and they act like they never won a game before, and they tore that goalpost down. Plus this one when I was in 7th grade with West Grand.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Wow. Hey, just a couple other mentions, Jim, of Middle Park coaches, if you don't mind. Maybe jog some memories here. You've mentioned Coach DeBay and meant the world to me. And yeah, I do have stories. Fred Litzenberger was the high school basketball coach for 1 year when I was an 8th grader. So it would have been a couple years out. And Fred ended up being a college coach for many, many years. But he would work with us 8th graders after the high school practice, and after our 8th grade practice, we'd walk up the hill. And Fred would teach us. He taught us the high post offense, that UCLA was running at the time, and he got drafted. He was only there 1 year and got drafted into the service for Vietnam. But he was really a huge part of my deciding to become a coach, I think. And then I played for John Gosman in high school, and John was a big influence as well. I played for Coach DeBay up until my senior year, and then Jack Meehan came in. And Jack was a big influence on my life, and he has passed away too. But he was a big influence on my life and coaching career too. So I just thought I'd throw out those names for people to remember. Now, we mentioned Coach Julian earlier, and when I decided to play basketball instead of wrestle, because I had wrestled 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I had to go in and tell Coach Julian. That was one of the. I had to summon every bit of guts that I had that day to go in and explain to him that I was going to play basketball. That was one of the hardest things I ever did.
7th grade, I went out for wrestling. I lasted 1 day. I thought, these guys are way too serious. I thought wrestling was like wrestling around with your brothers, and it wasn't at all.
Right. Right. They actually
So
knew some moves, huh?
yeah, well, Coach Zulian's idea of wrestling, as far as I could tell, was you just run for about 2 hours, run laps in the gym. So anyway, what about your family, Gary? Now, anybody that doesn't know, and Doug Lynch has said hi on here on text. He was our guest last time. Hi, Doug. How you doing? And Gary and I are cousins. My mom and his mom are sisters. They were just about a year apart in age.
Right.
I don't know
Right.
if you realize that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I did. I did.
so
Yeah,
when you
I'd like
grew
to
up in
just space
Granby,
that.
there was a lot of family, wasn't there?
There was a lot of family there. Not so much now, but there was. And I heard Doug just kind of talking about, and good job the other day, by the way, Doug, talking about his family coming to Grand County. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on our mother's side is that our grandpa Wes was ranching and steamboat, and things got very tough on ranchers during the Depression. And I believe somebody, I've heard who, but I think somebody told him that there was going to be a dam being built and going to form Lake Granby, and that there was a pool hall for sale in Granby, and that he might ought to look into maybe purchasing that pool hall and moving his family over the hill to Granby. I mean, that's the way I remember the story anyway. That's the one I've always gotten. My dad was a much more, maybe a more elaborate story in that he grew up in West Texas, and like a lot of guys in his age group, wanted to go into the service during World War II. So he, the summer after his junior year, he hitchhiked. He lived near Lubbock, and he hitchhiked to North Texas, which is in Denton, north of Dallas, to get his high school degree, so that he could join the Navy. And he was in the Navy for, I think, 2.5 years, something like that. And served his time, and then his sister and her husband were going to open a cleaners in Rangeley, Colorado. So they were pulling some cleaning equipment from Texas to Rangeley, broke down in Granby, and somebody told them, "Well, we need cleaners here. Why don't you just stay here?" So they did. So when my dad got out of the Navy, he didn't have anything to do, didn't want to go back to what he called old dry West Texas. So he came to Granby, and that's what got him there. And then, he and our Uncle Jim eventually bought that cleaners from their sister and brother-in-law, and then ran that cleaners for quite a while.
Do you remember the dry cleaners on Main Street? Do you
I
remember?
do. I can remember standing there. Leon Yacovetti, I believe, was who Dad sold it to, because Uncle Jim had already moved to Salt Lake. So I can remember.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember Leon. I can remember standing out in front of the cleaners on the sidewalk. That's about as old as the memory of the one I told you about watching the basketball game in Kremling. I can remember standing on the cleaners, on the sidewalk in front of the cleaners, and the day he took the cleaners, my dad had bought the Gamble store right next door. So the other thing, Jim, you talk about memories in Granby growing up, is just all the, what to us, we're old men. I'm sure I'm older than most of them were, but just all the old men around town that knew you, and you got to know, and you just kind of what they all kind of watched out for you a little bit. I think, they all watched you grow up, and they all watched you play sports, and things like that. That was a fun memory too, is that how close knit that community was. And you go in the pool hall.
I didn't know who was related and who wasn't,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did have an awful lot of family there at that time.
We did. We did. Almost every other business up and down the street, we were related somehow. Things have changed like they do everywhere.
Yes.
All the time. Yep. Gary, we're starting to get a little short on time. Let me tell you that you can find our podcast, Baby Boomer Tales, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and more. You can also find us at babyboomertales.com, where there are links to all that and links to our Boomers General Store. I'm trying to finance this podcast the best I know how. And one way is selling stuff. So right here,
Sure.
this is the special this week. Our Boomers General Store. Everything's backwards, kind of like cutting your hair in a mirror. Coffee cup. Plus, we have stuff for grandmas and grandpas and little grandchildren. You ought to visit it. babyboomertales.com/shop. Okay, I'm back. I paid the bills.
All right. Hey, real quick before we go, I got to tell a story on Jim. Jim's
oh no!
youngest brother Don. We were in the same grade. Jim, Donnie, and I were, and so we'd sleep over at each other's house quite often. I don't know if you remember this or not, but I can remember you being out. We were probably, I don't know, 5th grade. You were probably junior in high school or so. You must have been out, as teenagers tend to be, and we were dead asleep in bed and sleeping in the same bed. And you came home and grabbed some crackers and just crushed them all in our bed. I remember trying to go to sleep with cracker. We swept them all out, and there were still cracker crumbs in there. We couldn't go to sleep. I don't know why you decided to do that, but you just got home and decided, I'm going to do this to these two little dudes.
I was such a nice older brother. No, I do not remember that. I'm glad that you told a tame one.
we probably told the folks on YouTube. I'm
sure. Who knows? We all did things in our past. Thank goodness we lived through it, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, Gary, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here? We're running a little long.
Yeah. No, I just want to say I thank you, Jim, for the opportunity today, and I thank you for your podcast. It's always so fun to listen to things, and it sometimes moves me to tears when you talk about your aunts and your mom and things like that. But you do a great job, and I thank you for it, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We talk about Aunt Donna on the podcast that's going right now a little bit.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Gary. I'm going to get away from you just for a second and just tell you to always be kind. This is Jim. Peace out.